Hello everyone. Welcome back to Beyond Classroom. In this short lesson, we will learn everything you need to know about infinitives. It's one of the simplest and most useful tools in the English language. By the end of this video, you will understand what infinitives are, when and how we use them, and how to avoid common mistakes. Let's begin. Let's begin with the basics. So, what exactly is an infinitive? Think of it as the verb in its most basic form, the way you see it in a dictionary, like run, eat, study, travel, or be. When we use this basic form in a sentence, we often, but not always, put the word to in front of it. This creates the full infinitive, like to run, to eat, to study, to travel, or the all-important to be. One important thing about infinitives is that they are unchanging. Unlike main verbs, they don't change for tense, person, or number. Because of this neutral form, infinitives can work in different ways in a sentence. They can function as a subject complement, an object complement, an adjective, or an adverb. Let's look at some quick examples of how infinitives function. First, to exercise every day is good for your health. Here, to exercise every day is the subject of the sentence, the thing that is good. That's the job of a noun. Second, her dream is to become a doctor. In this case, to become a doctor completes the meaning of the subject, her dream. This is the job of a subject complement. It tells us what the dream actually is. Third, he hopes to travel next summer. Here, to travel is the object of the verb hopes. It tells us what he hopes to do. Again, functioning as a noun. Fourth, I want you to stay. Here, you is the object, and to stay tells us what I want you to do. This is the job of an object complement. It completes the meaning of the object. Next, I need something to eat. In this sentence, to eat describes the noun something. It tells us what kind of something I need, the job of an adjective. And finally, I came here to study. Here, to study modifies the verb came. It explains why I came, which is the job of an adverb expressing purpose. So, infinitives are simple, but they are very flexible. Now that you know what they are, let's look at how we use them. Now let's look at the most common use of infinitives. We use to plus verb to explain why someone does something, the purpose. We often use this after verbs of movement like go, come, walk, travel, call, or send. For example, I went to the cafe to read. She called him to ask a question. They exercise to stay healthy. Here is a very important point. We don't use for plus verb plus ing to express purpose. For example, I went to the shop for buying milk. This is incorrect. The correct sentence is, I went to the shop to buy milk. So remember, when you want to express purpose, use to plus verb. And in more formal writing, you can use in order to or so as to. But in everyday English, just using to plus verb is perfect. Another very common use of infinitives is after certain verbs. There are many verbs in English that are normally followed by to plus verb. Some of the most common ones are want, need, plan, decide, hope, agree, promise, learn, forget, remember, and try. Let's look at some examples. I want to improve my English. They decided to move to Canada. Don't forget to lock the door. These verbs naturally take an infinitive after them. So this pattern is very useful to remember. One important note: some verbs can be followed by both a gerund and an infinitive, but the meaning changes. For example, I stopped to talk means I stopped doing something so that I could talk. But I stopped talking means I finished talking. We'll look at this difference more in the next video. Infinitives are also very common after adjectives. In many sentences, the infinitive helps explain the reason for the adjective. A useful pattern to remember is adjective plus to plus verb. Here are some common examples: happy to, excited to, afraid to, difficult to, important to. Now let's look at some sentences. I'm happy to see you. She's excited to start her new job. He's afraid to speak in public today. English is difficult to learn. It's important to sleep well. And here is an important point. After adjectives that express feelings, the infinitive often explains why the person feels that way. For example, she was surprised to hear that. Infinitives can also come after nouns, and in this case, they usually describe the purpose or the function of that noun. A useful pattern to remember is noun plus infinitive, or simply noun plus to plus verb. Here are some examples. I need a book to read. Do you have something to drink? We have a meeting to attend. She has homework to finish. In each of these sentences, the infinitive tells us what the noun is for, what purpose it serves. So infinitives after nouns give extra meaning by explaining the reason or the intended use of the noun. Infinitives also appear in several very common fixed patterns. These expressions are useful because they show specific meanings, and they are best learnt as complete chunks. The first pattern is to plus adjective plus to plus verb. This shows that something is impossible or not suitable. For example, this box is too heavy to lift. The second pattern is adjective plus enough plus to plus verb. This expresses that someone or something is sufficient or ready for the action. For example, she is old enough to drive. Another useful structure is it takes plus time plus to plus verb. We use this to show how much time an action requires. For example, it takes 2 hours to cook. And finally, we often use infinitives after expressions like the first, the next, or the last. These describe the order of events of people. For example, he was the first to arrive. These are all fixed patterns, so it's helpful to learn them as whole expressions rather than trying to analyze each word. Sometimes we use the infinitive without the word to. This form is called the bare infinitive, and it appears in a few very common situations. The first one is after modal verbs, such as can, could, may, might, should, must, will, and would. For example, she can swim. You should study. We will meet tomorrow. The second place we use the bare infinitive is after the verbs let, make, and sometimes help. For example, my parents let me stay out late. The teacher made us redo the task. Can you help me carry this? Here, both carry and to carry are acceptable after help. And finally, we use the bare infinitive after expressions like had better and would rather. For example, you'd better leave now. Had better is used to give strong advice, almost a warning. It means it's a good idea for you to leave now, otherwise there may be a problem. I'd rather stay home. Would rather expresses a preference. Here, it means I prefer to stay home. A simple thing to remember is this. With the bare infinitive, the verb stays in its base form. No to, no s, and no ed. Before we move on, let's look at some very common mistakes learners make with infinitives and how to fix them. First, a very common mistake is using for plus the ing form when you want to talk about purpose. For example, some learners say, I came for meeting you. This is incorrect. The correct form is, I came to meet you. So remember, when you want to express purpose, use to followed by the base form of the verb, not for plus verb ing. The second mistake is using the word to after a modal verb. Modal verbs must be followed by the bare infinitive, which means the verb without to. For example, some learners say, she can to dance, but the correct form is, she can dance. Another common mistake is using to followed by a verb ending in ing. For example, some learners say, I need to going now. This is incorrect. The correct form is, I need to go now. A good rule to remember is this. When in doubt, use to plus base verb, unless the verb comes after a modal verb or after special verbs like let and make. That's the end of this session. I hope you now have a clear understanding of the form, the main uses, and the common mistakes related to infinitives. There are many other uses in English, but we have focused on the ones you'll need most in everyday communication. Thank you so much for watching this lesson. In the next video, we will look at gerunds, their forms, uses, and common mistakes. And after that, we'll compare infinitives and gerunds side by side and practice choosing between infinitives and gerunds because that's where most learners get confused. If you found this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for the next video.